Oh, hello there. You might be wondering what's with the room. Why does it look so different? It's because we decided that our old room looks a little bit rough and we decided to revamp it for the new era. But in actuality, it's a long story. But don't worry, my friend. I got a different game up my sleeve. And boy, is it interesting.
Back here. Gotta grab those regen tabs and get the hell out of here.
I knew you'd come back for me, Trey.
Larry! I thought you were dead!
Oh, yeah.
Chavez.
Imagine a twin-stick shooter like Robotron or Smash TV, put it in a run-and-gun with platforming elements, and turn it into a game in a sci-fi fantasy setting with an absolutely insane story. And stars Bruce Willis. Yeah, I told you it was going to be interesting.
Shut the fuck up.
Hey, I didn't do shit to you. Why the fuck are you starting this already?
Because it's funny, that's why.
The more things change, some just stay to. This is Apocalypse for the Sony PlayStation, developed by Neversoft, yes, that Neversoft, and published by Activision in 1998. There's a surprising amount of history behind this game. Development for Apocalypse began sometime around 1995 when the PlayStation hit the market in the US. Seeing how the game engine for it was completed around January of the following year. But instead of being a chaotic third-person shooter with Smash TV style controls, it was going to be a much slower third-person shooter with Smash TV style controls, and having an AI-controlled partner called Trey Kincaid that was going to help you with your journey. Kinda like how Tails acts like a AI-controlled partner to you in the Sonic games. Except it's a third-person shooter and not a platformer. Oh, and the character that you're supposed to control is just a mercenary, he doesn't even have a name. Ultimately, this buddy system was completely dropped in favor of Trey Kincaid being the main playable character. There's also other things like unused levels and a few death animations that made it into the making of video shown here. The game also uses motion capture for most of the characters' models and animation. I think they did quite a lot, though only a few made it to the final game, I believe. Kinda like how once the game started to be more focused on the main character, Bruce's involvement in terms of vocalizations pretty much turned into one-liners and dialogue for the cutscenes. And oh boy, there is a lot of one-liners. Because of course, Bruce Willis.
They're all over, they're everywhere! Come get some! Bring it on, baby!
Yeah, this game has a ton of one-liners, and you're going to be hearing them quite a lot. However, because of course it's Bruce motherfucking Willis, you can't truly hate them. It does get old pretty fast though. The story in this game is absolutely insane. Well, not exactly insane, but it's pretty crazy. In fact, there is three pages in the manual dedicated to this story. But it's pretty simple. In the year of undisclosed, at least it's better than XXXX, haha, sex, the future has been quite troublesome, being contested by science and religion. However, a mysterious figure only known as the Reverend, how clever, took over the world and created a corrupt theocracy where all science is banned. Though, ironically, he does use some of the science experiments to create the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. We then cut to Trey Kincaid being interrogated for going against the Reverend's values. And after saying this lovely line,
Case of the scientist in direct violation of the 12 recommendations of the Reverend. How would you plead?
I'm gonna stick my foot so far up your
Guilty!
he gets sentenced to death. However, his sentence doesn't last very long because Trey Kincaid is pretty smart and decides to do this.
bad dreams tonight.
Nanotech in action. Welcome to paradise.
And thus, your journey begins. And he will imprison you and condemn you to death to test your mettle. The game has a total of 11 stages. The first level is where you do your prison escape. The second is where you traverse through a sewer, which is also a cave for some reason. The third is where you mow down a bunch of guards while escaping a bustling metropolis, which is in ruin. The next stage after the boss is literally the exact same thing, except it takes place on the rooftops. There's also a stage where you have to traverse through a strange graveyard to meet your ex-girlfriend, where you also have to deal with one of the most annoying doors in gaming history. Then you traverse through the underground headquarters of Warfighters Incorporated, and the last stage before the final boss is literally the fucking White House. No, seriously, the White House. It's like this game was made by a fucking conspiracy theory. Starting with level 4 and then every other stage, you gotta fight against the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which for the most part are pretty easy. The first one, Death, is piss easy as hell, like it's almost pathetic. All you need to do is just keep that right stick forward and occasionally jump when you see those shock bombs that he occasionally shoots out. Plague is a bit more challenging, though still fairly easy. You just have to avoid her shockwaves and spread shots that form into a heart, and of course, that damn disco ball, which will lower once she is low on health, but not exactly halfway, and starts unleashing a laser beam, which is only blocked by the fences around the arena. Her second phase is pretty easy, just avoid her and her acid trails. War's first phase is pretty easy for the most part. The only thing you really need to avoid is his homing missiles, as well as a laser beam, which can mow your health down pretty quickly if you don't know what you're doing. Then you have to go full-blown Scooby-Doo creepy run. But instead of running until you die, you just have to shoot these barrels in order to make him fall flat on his fucking ass. The last part is the exact same, except you have to also jump on the platforms and just simply shoot him. This can be a bit tricky due to the fact you have to time your jumps perfectly, otherwise you fall into the lava below, but if you know what you're doing, this can be pretty easy.
Half of Beelzebub! Welcome to hell!
The final boss has 2 phases. The first one is fairly standard. Just avoid the laser beams that he shoots out of his eyes or something, I don't know. He also throws out these explosive projectiles, which can throw you off to a little bit of a loop since they also turn into flames that linger around for a little bit. But it shouldn't take you too long before you head to the more difficult second phase, where he will walk close to you and breathe fire at you. The final phase has him jumping around, unleashing these shockwaves that you must jump to avoid. He also unleashes the same fire projectiles that he does in his first phase. Then after a while, the center of the arena will start breaking, and you have to jump on these edges of the arena to get your power-ups, which are thankfully plentiful. And then at some point, he'll jump towards those platforms that you're at, which will cause them to sink into the lava. so make sure you're quick on your jumps to get to the other platform in time. Eventually, it'll be reduced to just 2 platforms, one where the beast is doing all of his attacks, and the other where you pretty much do nothing but do your best to shoot shit at him. The game ends when he's finally down and you get this.
He who battles demons is destined to become one. Shoot me.
I'll see you in hell.
Thought they had me there for a minute.
Welcome to paradise.
Yeah, so he becomes the very beast that he sought to destroy, and roll credits. Now it's time to talk about the rest of the game. Graphically, the game looks pretty good for 1998. It's nothing spectacular, but it looks pretty good for the most part. The atmosphere and level design for most of the game is pretty much on par with what you expect with a cyberpunk fantasy style game like this. It's also a pretty dark game, though I think this was probably intentional to fit the mood of the game. The game also includes FMVs that are sprinkled around in various areas of the game, which is a pretty nice touch for a game like this. Though they did the exact same thing when they made Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. In the sound department, the sound effects themselves are fairly standard, but the music is pretty decent, though that's probably because it was done by Tommy Tallarico and his crew, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tommy himself didn't have much involvement with it, knowing the person that he is.
Hey, you forgot one more thing.
Wait, what do you mean? You mentioned Tommy Tallarico, so you gotta talk about it at least once. Fine. He was also the dude behind the Intellivision Amico. I'm not really going to go through a whole lot of it, but long story short, it's been 6 years since the console has been delayed multiple times, and it still hasn't been released, and the vast majority of its games have been released on other systems. Oh god damn it. There's also a handful of songs licensed for this game, most notably ones from System of a Down and Poe. Poe also voiced Trey Kincaid's ex-girlfriend. Of course, I had to mute these due to obvious reasons. The controls are pretty typical for a Smash TV style game like this. You use the analog sticks to move, aim, and shoot. You can also use the directional pad and face buttons to do the same thing. But interestingly, if you use the face buttons, there's this weird centering that goes on, where it will move in that direction until it hits the button you are pressing. For example, if I'm pressing the triangle button, and then the circle button, and then I let go of the circle button, it will move slowly until I get to the position I am at the triangle button. Of course, this can be mitigated by using an analog stick, which gives you full analog movement. The triggers and bumpers let you jump, crouch, select weapon, and use your smart bombs, which you're going to be using quite a bit in this game since it can get pretty tough pretty fast. You can also do a roll by pressing the crouch button and movement buttons, but it's kind of useless, and I only used it a few times, mostly just to record footage that it actually exists. In fact, pressing the crouch button in general is pretty useless as a whole, unless if you want to get mild amusement by rapidly pressing it so you can make Bruce do the fucking stinky leg. Of course, the best way to avoid enemy fire is by jumping and moving. Near the beginning of the game, you do have a little bit instances where you do have to jump on like certain platforms and stuff, though it isn't until like near the end of the game where platforming is heavily used, and it's usually pretty hit or miss. This is mostly thanks to the fixed camera, which can cause a bit of problems for you sometimes. Plus, due to the game being rather dark, seeing your shadow onto oncoming platforms can be a bit of a gamble. But again, you only really have to do this near the end of the game, so it's not really all that important. Since of course this is a run and gun, there is a wide variety of weapons that you could pick up at your disposal. Of course, the first weapon you have is the only one that is unlimited. Your starting weapon, the machine gun. This is also the only hit scanning weapon in the game. It's fairly effective if you want to conserve ammo for the more later stages where you really need to use the other weapons, but it's the weakest of all the weapons, and isn't very effective against bosses unless you're really desperate for a challenge. Or you just don't have anything else up your arsenal. Next we got the Rip Laser and Particle Beams. They're both kind of identical, except the Rip Laser looks a little bit cooler. That's all I can really say. Then we got the Grenade Launcher, which is pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. It's a grenade launcher, what do you really expect? Then we got the Flamethrower, which mostly works exactly like the Particle Beam and Rip Laser, except it burns enemies and does a little bit more damage. It also has a surprisingly decent range for a flamethrower. Then we come to the homing missiles, which is basically what it says. It's a homing missile. It's also stupidly effective towards hordes of enemies. So of course you want to use that quite a bit throughout the game. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of clips of the pulse laser and rocket launchers in action, but what I can tell you is that the rocket launcher is pretty much exactly what you think it is, and the pulse laser is pretty much your main weapon, except it's a little bit more powerful and a bit faster, though it does result in your ammo supply going down faster than I could say fuck. Overall, the weapons do get the job done, but aren't really anything special. And I think that perfectly describes Apocalypse as a whole. Overall, while there isn't really anything that special about Apocalypse aside from the fact it was done by the Tony Hawk people and stars Bruce Willis, this game is pretty fun for what it is. It looks decent, it sounds pretty good, and it plays pretty good. Nothing more and nothing less. It's not exactly a game that you should play right now, but if you just want some arcade action on your PlayStation, this game isn't a bad choice. Granted, there are a lot better arcade-style games on the PlayStation, but this one's a pretty good choice, and it's still an interesting piece of Neversoft's history. I guess that's it. It's time to end the video.
I'd buy that for $1.
Just stop.